Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samya sampatoshe. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa, bai qian wan jie nan zao yu. Wo jin jian wen de shou chi, yuan jie ru lai zhen shi yi. Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Venerable Master and Dharma friends, good afternoon to you all. My name is Heng Sure. Good evening to you, folks in the Northern Hemisphere. We're here on Sunday, January 9th, Saturday, January 8th in California, to look into the Flower Garland Sutra. And let us begin by acknowledgement of country, to say that the Kombumerri people of the Ugambe language group practice their spiritual connections to land and to all creation here in this location for thousands of years. Today, we acknowledge them as the traditional custodians. With gratitude that we share this land today, with sorrow for the costs of that sharing, and with hope that we can move together to a place of justice and partnership. We acknowledge their wisdom and their elders, past, present, and emerging. Okay. And here is our invocation, requesting the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Flower Garlands Assembly to draw near and to bless everybody who is joined and all of our generations of ancestors as well. Give me 1 second. Much more respectful when it's in tune. Found the culprit. It was the C string. We're ready. So let's see here. Okay, what do we have for you all today? We're concluding the prose portion of the 10 Stages chapter, and that just precedes the verses. And we're in a section of the first stage of the 10 stages of the Flower Garland Sutra. And there we go. And it's what we call boilerplate. And boilerplate means it's a repeated section that returns. Slight changes from one stage to the next, but it's the kind of the infrastructure of the chapter, of the grammar and the way it flows from beginning to middle to end. So the boilerplate part is really interesting because this is a really, 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 really old book, so to speak. It's a scripture. These are the words of the Buddha. And we get, as we look at the Avatamsaka Sutra, we get an insight into how knowledge was passed on in the early phases of our life as humans, of our civilization as humans on the planet. It goes back 2,500 years. So what was important then? We can still take a look. And other than going out and looking at mountains and oceans and the oldest of trees, we don't very often get a chance to look back through time to the roots of our civilization. And this is what the Avatamsaka Sutra is. And because our teacher, Master Hsuan, made it important for us to open these texts, he said, let the Buddha's voice be heard. And the Buddha can't speak English. So Master Hua, explained the text in Chinese, and we, his generation of disciples, are still working to translate what Master Hua left behind. So that's how we get to what we have today. So it's really fascinating when you get to the boilerplate, this repeating portion of the sutra. What are the things that are considered just the structure? You know, you kind of like lifting the hood of the sutra and looking at the engine. This is what we get to see. So that's where we are. You ready? Should we do it? Let's take a look. Here's the text. And the Chinese, I've redone the English section. So I'm going to read we'll read the Chinese first, but then we're going to switch over to a newer version of the English. So you'll get a chance to hear something updated, okay? Here's the Chinese, here it is. Let's see, we're gonna go down to Ichie Zhuang. Okay, let's do, this is a fairly long passage. You get a chance to practice your Mandarin. Here we go, ready? 佛子菩萨摩诃萨住此初地，多作阎浮提王，好贵自在，常护正法，能益大师，摄取众生，善除众生坚贪之垢，常信大师，无有穷尽，不施爱于利欲同事，如是一切，诸所作业，皆不离念佛，不离念法，不离念僧，不离念同行菩萨，不离念菩萨行，不离念诸波罗蜜，不离念诸地，不离念力，不离念无畏，不离念不公佛法，乃至不离念具足一切种一切智智。Now, those of you with quick ears will say, hey, we heard this last week. Yes, but not the improved English. So here we go. Disciples of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who stays on the first stage, serves primarily as king of Jambudvipa. He is powerful, honored, and sovereign, and always protects the right Dharma. He's able to use generosity to attract living beings. He is skilled at ridding living beings of the defilement of stinginess. I think I need to rid. There we go. He always practices generosity without tiring. The karma that he creates while giving, speaking kind speech, practicing cooperation, and in service is connected to mindfulness of the Buddha, connected to mindfulness of the Dharma, connected to mindfulness of the Sangha, connected to mindfulness of the Bodhisattvas of identical practices, connected to mindfulness of the Bodhisattvas practices, connected to mindfulness of the Paramitas, connected to mindfulness of all the stages, connected to mindfulness of the powers, connected to mindfulness of the fearlessnesses, connected to mindfulness of the uncommon Buddha Dharmas, up to and including connected to mindfulness of endowment with the wisdom of all modes. Yes, indeed. All right. Now, what's going on? What we have here is a toolkit. This is like a carpenter with his toolbox, his tool belt. It's like a doctor with their medicine kit. This is the Bodhisattva's toolkit, Bodhisattva's medicine kit. And the list of things that he's got in there is surprising, I think, and very revealing. This is what's important for a Bodhisattva. Did we remember last week? We actually looked at them. Here they are. Look at the stuff. First of all, the Bodhisattva practices giving. That's his number one practice on the first stage. As a result, it's called the stage of happiness, because giving results in joy. How funny. Growing up, what do we think as kids? We think, I want to get nice gifts at Christmas and my birthday and on New Year's, and I want to get good stuff. And we hope we get really nice presents under the Christmas tree, etc. And how rare is the child who would say, boy, I really can't wait to give really good gifts at Christmas. But if you can find a child who does that, you know what? The happiness increases as you give the gifts. The problem with happiness being tied to getting stuff is if you're not getting stuff, you're not happy. Or if your stuff isn't the best or the newest or the stuff you want, you're not happy. Instead, so as a result, you become kind of passive and you're not in the driver's seat of your happiness. Your happiness is limited to the stuff you get. And if you don't get any, no happiness. Well, that seems kind of powerless, doesn't it? You're not the agent of your happiness. So when we flip it over, like the Bodhisattva does here on the first stage, you realize that if you have that secret, that single ingredient, which is giving results in feeling happy, you are in charge. Now you're the boss. Now you're in the driver's seat. As much as you give, that's how happy you get. Who knows this? Parents know this. The kid at, let's say on birthdays, is of course happy, but if you turn the camera over to the adult, to the parent, oh, there's the happiness on the face of the adult who sees their kid light up when the gifts connect. That's the Bodhisattva's secret. So what do the Chinese say? 助人是快乐之本. Helping others is the source of happiness. So here's our Bodhisattva. And we mentioned last time, notice these four things. Let's see here. Giving it benefit, cease, giving in, let's see, all their methods of attraction. I left out a part here. All their methods of attraction, be it giving, kind speech, cooperation, and service. There. Okay, so we said last week that these four things, they're called the Si, She, Fa, 4 ways to attract living beings. What's that about? Well, here's the thing about a bodhisattva is they depend on their vows and their practices. The 2 most important things for a bodhisattva are practices and vows. Heng, Yuan, 2 things. And why is that? Remember the Bodhi resolve? We talked about this a lot. Bodhi resolve, this Putishin, said to be the most important. That's the real foundation of the Bodhisattva's path. Is the Putishin, the Bodhi resolve, and it's got 2 parts. One part says, I know I have the potential for great wisdom. I can become a Buddha. And the way I get to great wisdom, what's keeping me from great wisdom right now are the living beings of my nature who are still upset. They're still unhappy. They're still annoyed. They're still irritated. They're still greedy, angry, and deluded. So the Bodhisattva says, okay, to get to great wisdom, I have to remove those pains and suffering from living beings. So that's what he does. How does he do it? He vows to do it, and he learns, he expands his toolkit. He puts Bodhisattva's tools in his living beings medicine bag, curing illnesses of living beings. That's the deal. And these are, so, okay, right now, here in the first stage, he doesn't have a lot of those tools. He's learning them. This is the first of 10 stages. So it's kind of the freshman class of his career, his academic career, studying bodhisattvahood. So what does he need? He needs a way to bring living beings in so he can teach them. If he doesn't have any connections with living beings, nobody to teach. His Bodhi resolve is going to go dry, going to dry up. It's going to be ineffective. So he's got to make relationships with living beings. Now, who says, oh, you Buddhists, you're just misanthropic, you just hate the world, you just, you know, turn your back on living beings seeking some airy-fairy nirvana? Sorry, wrong religion. That's not the Buddhism that's being taught by the Buddha. The Buddhism that the Buddha taught talks about what? You have to be in relationship to living beings. You can't run off into a cave somewhere and seek some sort of separate bachelorhood nirvana. It doesn't work that way. So how does the Bodhisattva bring in living beings and establish this wholesome relationship? Number 1, gives to them. If you've been given to, you're remembered. For example, this morning, I was preparing my lecture, and outside, I have a glass wall with a sliding door. And outside on the balcony, there was a large white cockatoo who arrived. And he sat there and he looked at me, looked around, staring at me. And I felt these eyes on me. So I looked over. Oh, there's the large bird. And I'm like, okay, I'm working, I'm busy. And he goes, I'm like, you really think it's time for me to stand up and go over and feed you? What a demanding character you are. So he has connected me as the source of the birdseed. And if the birdseed is a little slow, he wants me to know that he's not happy and I should pay attention to. So of course, stand up, uncross my legs, get some birdseed, try to feed it. So that bird remembered me with fondness and a little bit of demanding, but he's connected me as the source of his full stomach. So yeah, if we give, the receiver of the gift remembers. And, you know, he expects service. Okay, I'm happy to serve. So we remember when we've been given to. That's one way to gather living beings in. Number 2, kind speech. there's something extremely powerful in a voice, probably because among our deepest first memories is our mother's voice while we were inside her womb. Before we were even born, we heard mom's voice saying our name. And mom was everything. She was our source of food and warmth. And so we connect mother's voice as a fundamental, as necessary to our existence. I'm here because of my mom, and that voice is key to that kindness, that source of well-being. So I think I watch the birds in my neighborhood respond to the cry, the song of their parents. And there's all kinds of bird songs in the forest, but that one currawong, they have this beautiful song, and the babies know it. And I can watch this because they're not babies anymore. They're now teenagers. They're as fully grown. Their attitudes, they haven't learned how to be currawongs, but their bodies are adult size. But they tune into their mother's cry the way they can pick it out from the rest of the sounds in the forest. And I think all species are the same. There's something really, really fundamental about the kindness of parents and that sound of the voice. So the Bodhisattva knows that, and he uses kind words to to create that relationship, that positive relationship. So that what? His goal is to be able, or her goal is to be able to speak Dharma, speak principles, to give good advice at the right time, so that new relationship, friend, student, whoever, can take the advice and use it and get better. Lose the misery, lose the pains, get over whatever the problem was. That's the Bodhisattva's method. So number 3 is what's called tongshi, cooperation, working together. Many hands make light work, and the Bodhisattva knows that. So he goes and she goes and gets involved in solving problems. And the living being goes, oh, here comes my colleague, here comes my buddy, here comes my co-worker. Good. They're always willing to pitch in, they're always willing to work together. So of course, you develop a positive relationship. And the 4th one is called Li Heng, which we used to say is beneficial activities. But that's not what it means. Service. You serve. The Bodhisattva understands the power of service. And it's, what did Master Hua tell us about the Bodhisattva path? It's 自度度他, 自教教他, 自利利他. You take yourself across by taking others across. By helping others wake up, you yourself wake up. And by helping others, you help yourself. If there was a 4th one of those, it would be 自乐乐他, or 自要要他. By making others happy, you make yourself happy. And this is true. Through service, there's just joy. One big important reason is when you're working for the benefit of others in a nonprofit, in an NGO, where the benefit comes from the good that you do, you can forget yourself. The ego is not the point. Self-aggrandizement, it's just not there. How much the less that whining, aggrieved sound that we hear in politics so much. I was wronged, I was robbed, I was stolen from, somebody hurt me, you gotta go help me, right? That powerless, pathetic voice of grievances that is characteristic of certain political persuasions is just so far away from wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom says, you want to be happy? You got your life together? Go serve. Go solve other people's troubles. Go give them some help. Put your shoulder on the wheel and push. And you feel better. You feel lighter. The self is not in charge. So if you apply the standards of wisdom to public service, you go help. Yeah. So that's the Bodhisattva. Now, okay, got that part? That's good. Now, what else does it say? It says, the next thing, there's 11 things that the Bodhisattva goes in the process of giving, speaking gently, kindly, working together and serving. The Bodhisattva never leaves mindfulness behind. So, 不离念什么什么什么 says, not apart from. So, I express that in my translation in a positive. In other words, is connected to, instead of not being broken from, say, is connected to. Now, this is one time. Let's look back at our, share my screen here. I'm going to look back at the document. Notice this word, here it is right here. 不离念 is not broken from, isn't separate from, and there's nian. What is nian? Nian is the word, the power word these days, mindful. There it is right there. It's a really interesting character because below is a heart and above is now, this moment, present. So the present heart. In other words, your thoughts right this minute. The Bodhisattva, in all of these methods of attraction that they do, they constantly keep in mind 11 things. What is this? This is the toolkit. Furthermore, it's real mindfulness. Mindfulness, this is Mahayana mindfulness. Okay, why am I saying it this way? Mindfulness is one of those new phenomenon in society. I was amazed the other day. I was reading the New York Times online, and they have an entire section on wellness, especially as folks are cooped up inside because of coronavirus and we're quarantined and can't leave our own home to prevent spreading the virus. We have all this time on our hands, and so many folks have taken to mindfulness, have taken to meditation. So there in the New York Times was how to meditate, a guide, the New York Times guide to meditation. I'm going, wow, if I had been in a cave or in a time capsule for the last, let's say, 10 years and came out today, somebody said, oh, you want to learn how to meditate? Take America's oldest, best newspaper, most respected newspaper, New York Times, full section on meditation. I would have gone, wait a minute, wrong world. Put me back in the time capsule and send me to the right place. True, so it is there, and it's well done. There's different levels, different kinds of practices, but it's the New York Times. The gray lady is teaching us how to meditate. So what's the point? The point is meditation rooted in Buddhist practices has come to society in a large way. There are critics of it who call it Mindfulness Inc., INC Incorporated, Mindfulness Incorporated, meaning that because many people are reaching for meditation these days, other people have very happily monetized it. They've turned it into a revenue stream, meditation and mindfulness for profit. Okay, people do that. The marketplace is how we get our money, and how we get our money is something we're preoccupied with. Some people would say that we're concerned about profit at the expense of everything else. Maybe so. Maybe so. There's much more that money can be a source of well-being. If you don't have it, you need the things that money can provide to survive. But once our survival is ensured, money doesn't guarantee happiness. So that's the critique. Mindfulness, the exciting thing about mindfulness, and why I suppose if I was a mainstream religion that was concerned about losing believers, this would upset me. Why? There's one major thing about mindfulness that sets it apart from all other theistic religions that have a God as the center. And what is it? Mindfulness tells us to 回光返照. Mindfulness says, look within. And if you look within, what happens is you discover all these things. You discover this garden of wisdom, this garden of insight, this treasury of control and responsibility and goodness that is the human mind. And if you look deeper, you discover the other things there too, which is the greed and the anger and the delusion. But let's talk about the positive things. And once you discover, wow, all that stuff is there waiting to be discovered, God in heaven, no matter whose God it is, tends to fade in importance. And that could be a threat if you were counting who and you had to have, you said, gee, where are all the young people going? Where are all the elders? They're at home being mindful. They're learning meditation. Uh-oh. Maybe we better up our game and discover our own Christian contemplation. So, not to knock theistic religions at all. They provide well-being for folks in times of need. Those are good stories, as long as you emphasize the goodness and go practice the goodness. In fact, as I mentioned before, our friend Bishop John Wester, Roman Catholic Bishop of Santa Fe, said after a week of meditating together with the Buddhists, he said, my number one discovery of this week of meditation together with the Buddhists is my gratitude to them for giving us the encouragement to reconnect with our own roots of Christian contemplation, he said. So, you bet. And then while sitting, meditating next to Bishop John, and he was sitting going like that, just like a rock for an hour. And then the hour was up and I rang the bell, it was time to stop. He kept sitting. Everybody else got up and went to breakfast and he was still sitting. So I was curious, I sat beside him, see how long he would sit. And 15 minutes later, he was ready to leave. So tidy up, turn the lights out, lock the door, go out to breakfast. Said, Bishop John, that was really impressive how strong your sitting has become. Said, what kind of Buddhist meditation are you using? And he said, Buddhist meditation? He said, I'm using the Jesus prayer. Our own roots of Christian contemplation. What is the Jesus prayer? The Jesus prayer is called Philokalia in Greek, and it's Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Shortened, if you want to tie it to the breath, to Lord Jesus, inhale, have mercy, exhale. Lord Jesus, have mercy. And Bishop Wester used the Jesus prayer and entered this state of stillness. Wonderful to watch him sit. So there we go. And if Buddhism can be a source for other faiths to discover that God is not exclusively in heaven, that what do they call it? He is not absent from anywhere. He is everywhere. That panentheism, how's it called? Forgotten my Greek. So that this omnipresence of the kingdom of God, panentheism, I guess they call it. That's what I was looking for. So that is wholesome, and it allows every minute of every day to be connected to the sacred and the holy. So you're never out of the presence of the divine, and however you imagine it to be. So good stuff. Mindfulness, right? That's mindfulness. We like that. And if Buddhism can be the springboard for other faiths to discover their own inner resources, we've given a gift. Indeed. So mindfulness. What is the Bodhisattva mindful of? Our Bodhisattva is really mindful of Buddhas, the Dharma, the Sangha, three jewels, and Bodhisattvas who practice the way they do. Tonghang, Tongxing, Pusa, Tonghang, Pusa. So when the Bodhisattvas gathering in living beings with those four methods of attraction, they keep Buddhas in their mind. They keep the Dharma in their mind. They keep the Sangha in their mind. They stay mindful of their fellow Bodhisattvas who maybe are more skillful than they are. They've been studying longer, and they get strength and they feel a connection, right? What else? They're Bodhisattvas practices. They're mindful of those practices. I'm going to do a little clean up here. There we go. There we are. Okay, done. All right. So Bodhisattva's practices are their strength. Those are the tools. So those are their tools. These are the practices are one of the tools. All of these are also tools from the toolkit. Look at the paramitas, these perfections, they're called, ways to go across, ways that work to cross over stinginess and cross over dissolution and cross over anger and cross over laziness and cross over scattered mind and lack of wisdom. Those perfections that take us across are number one tools. Furthermore, look at, they keep in mind all the stages. The Bodhisattva's 10 stages. They know where they are, they know where they want to go. Furthermore, this one, Bu Li Nian Li. What are the Li? The Li are Pusa Shi Li and Zhu Fo Shi Zhong Zhi Hui Li. 10 kinds of wisdom powers. These are the primary tools that help us get across. The Bodhisattva's powers include such things as psychic powers, knowledge of past lives, wow, knowledge of others' thoughts. Wow. If you knew what they were thinking, you wouldn't ever say the wrong thing. You'd know exactly what to say to get them to move the way they could towards wisdom, right? Yeah, knowledge of the heavenly, the Deva's eye and the Deva's ears. Wow. So those are in the powers. Furthermore, 4 kinds of fearlessnesses. If you are mindful of those, you have courage to do what's hard to do. There are 18 special Buddha dharmas, 18 dharmas that are unique to Buddhas, and this Bodhisattva knows about them, is mindful of them. And then the final goal is wisdom of all modes, the wisdom of wisdoms. That's what the Bodhisattva is mindful of. What are you mindful of? In breath, out breath. Inhale, exhale. Okay? So if you are studying mindfulness, what are you mindful of? Mindful. Your mind is full of Jin, Xin, present thought, in that character. So here's what a Bodhisattva is mindful of. Very cool. All right. Okay. What's next? Coming up. I need my sutra, please. Thank you. Here we go. 复作是念，我当依一切众生中，我当于一切众生中为首，为圣，为殊胜，为妙，为微妙，为上，为无上，为导，为降，为帅，乃至为一切智智所依止者。Okay. Then he reflects as follows: I should become a leader among all living beings. I should become supreme, become especially supreme. I should become fine, become subtle and fine. I should become superior. I should become unsurpassed. I should become a guide. I should become a general. I should become a chief, up to and including become one with the highest wisdom upon whom others can rely. Okay, what is this? This is the boilerplate text. This stuff pops up again later. 10 challenges the Bodhisattva gives himself. He says, among living beings, I have to be able to teach them. And if I'm lazy, if I'm every day, same old, just kind of going with the flow, they might listen, they might not. And then my vows will take longer and I won't be able to really help them. So he gives himself these challenges, these qualities, right? Going to be supreme, going to be subtle and fine, going to be a leader, going to be a chief. Finally, he says, I want to be somebody that others can rely upon for wisdom. So when things come up and I get a chance to contribute, they will hear in my ideas something that resonates inside, something that goes, yes, we should do it that way. How do you know wisdom when you hear it? The Buddhist answer, one Buddhist answer to that question is, we've all got it already. And what is the it that we have? Wisdom is a set of, let's think of it. When was the last time you saw an actual computer chip? The green silicon with the wires and the transistors and the capacitors and things like that. If you look at a computer chip, you flip it over and look back and forth, what you see is you're looking at a map, actually. This is how the electricity runs when it's plugged in and it's connected to other transistors. And then at a certain point, there's a series of codes, zeros and ones, that tell the electricity how to come up, how to follow the roads on the chip, and then translate into operating instructions through the software. So the hardware of a computer is wired a certain way. And back in the days of 286, remember 286 PC chips and 386s, and then Pentium became the next one for PCs, and Apple, of course, had its counterpart. So that's the hardware part of a computer. And it's modeled, of course, after the brain, human brain. And some people say that there's another brain down in what the Chinese call the dantian, Japanese call it the hara. It's the solar plexus. They call it the mesenteric brain. Ancient wisdom has told us this forever, that there's a brain in the head and there's a brain in the gut. So that lower brain also is hardwired, and the energy goes in certain pathways. The brain in the head has neural roots that if we learn, let's say we go out, we're going to learn to play tennis. The first, couple thousand times we swing the tennis racket, we may not even connect with the ball. But if we have good guidance and we don't tense up and we practice and practice, pretty soon we're able to hit a backhand and hit a forehand and hit a serve and volley and lob and all of the things that tennis players do. And there's a corresponding new set of pathways in the mind that are familiar and effective, and they work, and we can play tennis. Until we forge those roads, we can't play well. So you could say the brain is also hardwired. So one Buddhist theory about wisdom says that we are hardwired with principles, certain principles, such as knowledge of cause and effect, a sense of wishing to repay goodness, a sense of connection to our parents and to our benefactors and to our siblings. Those are all latent, inherent pathways in our nature. And they say our nature is similar, although you can go wrong if you try to force the analogy, but similar to a computer chip that is already wired for certain abilities. What is education is learning to power up and follow those pathways. An educated person in the classical mold is someone who has empowered those deepest patterns. So how do we recognize wisdom? We hear instructions, or we see, more importantly, we see an example and it lights up in us. Something in us corresponds and we go, yes, that makes sense. Now, we also have other potentials in there for doing evil, for doing harm, for doing selfish things. And as the old story goes, whichever wolf survives, it's the one that we feed. So how important at this point is, there's an old story about two wolves, right? One is evil and one is good. And the good wolf of our nature is the one that we feed. So how important is friendship, wholesome friends, and a good education? And we can be led astray equally by people who give us wrong perspectives, what are called in Chinese, 邪见, wrong views. So understand, how do we recognize wisdom? It lights up the right part of our nature. And if we follow it, if we fertilize it, if we feed it, then we grow in wisdom. Another good reason to listen to sutras, isn't it? So, because the sutras are the Buddhas. The Buddha has removed all of the things that get in between his nature and living beings. So every move, every thought, every word corresponds to wisdom. For us, we might hear wisdom, but if we've been covering ourselves over with greed and anger and delusion and pride and doubt, selfishness, then we might hear it, but there's things in the way and the connection is not solid. Okay, you get the point. So our Bodhisattva says, I want to be one upon whom others can rely for wisdom. That's his goal. So here at the first stage, Bodhisattva says, I'm going to be a wise person. That's my goal. and then others can hear the things I say, and they'll get it. They'll make sense. It will connect. Forward, moving on. Next passage. Powerful one. 是菩萨若欲舍家，于佛法中亲行精进，便能舍家，妻子五欲，依如来教，出家学道。Close you. Sorry, coming up here. It's funny. All right, I'll go down here. Here we go. There it is. If this Bodhisattva wants to renounce the householder's life, and then, if within the Buddha's teachings he diligently cultivates with vigor, he can then leave the home, his spouse and children, and the 5 desires. He relies upon the thus come one's teachings, leaves the home life, and studies the way. Look at that. For the first time in the 10 stages chapter, the opportunity, the mention of the sangha is here. The Buddha's left home monastic sangha. It's at the end. Look at that. So what this says is, all this time, all of the good things that the Bodhisattva has been doing in cultivation, all of these instructions can be done as a layperson. The 5-fold fears, how to control them, transform them, all of the giving, all of the vows, those incredible vows that went on and on. Vast and great is the Dharma realm, ultimate is empty space, to the ends of future time, beyond, to the ends of future time, without cease, right? All that is done, can be done as a layperson. At this point, now, the sutra says for the first time, should this individual decide that they want to renounce the householder's life, they can. And as a disciple of the Buddha, if they qin xing jing jin, if they work hard, if they practice and focus on the Dharma to the exclusion of other things, that's one of the main advantages of being a monastic, is how much time you can give to your practices. Then the person can, should they choose to, leave the home, let go of the close relationships of spouse and children, and stop pursuing wealth, sex, fame, food, and sleep, the 5 desires. This is a recipe for the initial steps of leaving the home life, leaving home as a monastic. Then the Bodhisattva relies upon the Tathagata's teachings, leaves home, and interestingly, 学道, it says. Yeah, 学道. Studies the Tao. As a Taoist? No, as a Buddhist. The 佛道. 菩萨道. Bodhisattva's path, the Buddha's path. Now, when Buddhist sutras arrived in China for the first time, it was about at the earliest was the 1st century BCE, before the Common Era. So we used to say 100 BC, that 1st century. Now we say before the Common Era, BCE. And then 1st century after that this corresponds to the Han Dynasty in Chinese chronology. Then more and more, 4th century, 5th century, the Tang Dynasty, the Golden Age. all those translations done, including our very own sutra here, is translated in that last period. So when the sutras first arrived, when the Buddhist teaching first arrived in China, what was there already? The Tao was there already. Taoism was the indigenous tradition in China. And so that word Tao, path or way, method or road even, already existed in the Chinese religious mind. And the Buddhists borrowed that word and recast it. Now, it existed in Sanskrit. It was called marga, sometimes magga in Pali. So the Buddha did talk about the madhyamika and the middle path. Nagarjuna Bodhisattva talked about the madhyamika teachings, finding the middle road that avoids extremes, not empty, not eternal, doesn't always exist, and it doesn't never exist. That's the middle way of Nagarjuna. Zhonglun is called. So, okay, so in other words, before Buddhism came to China, the Buddha was already talking about the word path or Tao. When it got to China, here was this word, Tao, and it was connected to the Taoists and the Confucianists. So Buddhism had to borrow a connection to this word and make it its own. So I know people sometimes get confused when they say, well, Tao, isn't that Taoism? So yeah, same word, same character, referring to a road, a path, a method, technique, a series of learning, a curriculum almost. The Tao, Pusa Tao, the Bodhisattva path, is practices and vows that you need to know. You make the vows and you acquire the practices. The Fo Dao, Bodhisattva path says, Fo Dao Wu Shang Shi Yuan Cheng. The Buddha's path is the highest, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn it, you say. In that case, road works. The road to Buddhahood is the highest road. Okay, what is this? Here is our Bodhisattva leaving home, renouncing the householder's life, becoming a monastic, becoming a monk or a nun. And I want to say that at City of 10,000 Buddhas, 4 or 5 times more women leave the householder's life than men. So my goodness, leaving home, becoming a monk is really popular among women at City of 10,000 Buddhas. So it's not just men. And if you only use one pronoun, you're the minority if you're a guy. So what is it about leaving home? What I think a lot of people are surprised by, the sutra says, letting go of a marriage relationship and being a father to children. You do that, indeed, but you don't become antisocial. When you are a monastic, you are a very social being. Why do people not want to leave home? One thing is, if you were raised with siblings, brothers and sisters, if you were married before you leave home, probably there's not a single night that you have not been next to another heartbeat, a beating heart, bump, 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 and the warmth of a circulatory system, right? And suddenly to realize you're going to be sleeping alone half of every day, the night half, you're not going to be next to another heartbeat. That's a thought. You have to deal with that. I know They say in traditional Tibetan homes, everybody, because it's so cold, everybody sleeps together on a heated bed. In Manchuria, the same. But they say that the worst thing that you can do, the biggest challenge for a Tibetan to leave home, is to be isolated from that nest of other bodies, other beings. And so young boys in the monastery still keep their closeness at night. And they say in cultures like that, the worst punishment that you can give to a child is to separate him, or to a man or to a woman, to ostracize, to send someone out from the community. Essentially, they die because they're separated from that larger heartbeat. So if you're a monastic, you sleep alone. There's another caution about leaving home. They say that there are many men who go directly from their mother's kitchen to their wife's kitchen. And you get married, you just switch tables. You switch kitchen tables. You eat at your mother's table until you get married, and then you eat at your wife's table. And to somehow let go of that comfort and security of knowing the food's going to be hot and ready for you when you sit down. Oh, right? If that's a challenge, isn't it? That's hard. There is security in numbers to go alone. We like to hear breathing around us, to know that you and the universe are going to be breathing together. That's a challenge. Some people are deeply connected to their clan, to their surname. So to be named Wang, or to be named, White House, Whitehead, to be named Abruzzi, to be named some of in Quebec, where my father comes from, there are famous names, that the clan, that's your identity. And without that identity to the ancestral name, you don't exist. How strong that is to change your name, to no longer use your new surname is Shakya. Many people have an issue, can't do that. Now, that's all the challenges that many people maybe don't think about, but the reality of being your own independent, self-reliant unit, able to not only exist, but to thrive without that heartbeat and warmth and extended nervous system of brothers and sisters and spouses and children, surname and clan, that you can do very well without that. That's a challenge, maybe. Let's flip it over. The Buddha's Sangha is the oldest running fraternity, sorority on the planet. Give me another social unit that exists in many ways identically to the way it was constructed 2,500 years ago. Can't find one. So the social structure for monastics who live alone together. What monks and nuns do is we live alone together in a group. Happy, find a monastic over 30 years in robes who's unhappy, and that's an unusual individual. The monastics who survive 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, without exception, are people who are contented and happy in their skin, not annoyed, not lonely, not unadjusted, maladjusted, right? Who would think that leaving home you wind up with more interpersonal connections than you would had you stayed relating to your spouse and your kids. As a monastic, I have more stories and connections. I'm related in an important way to more families than I would have if I know more stories about people's lives than I ever would if I'd been just a ordinary householder. Right? Another, for that question of the ancestral line and your surname and your clan, it's true that I let my surname, my family name go, but the lineage that you step into as a Buddhist monastic goes back unbroken into millennia. And the wholesome role models, the strong men and women, wise, kind-hearted men and women, you know their stories, you know their names, and you are carrying it forward into the present, into 2021. When you're a monastic, you have the Dharma, the way things are done when they're done right. So the customs, the organization, the rewards, the forms that have wisdom as the goal and sutras as a bottomless resource that you can tap anytime. And it's ever deeper, ever deeper. You have practices that you do together as a shared challenge every day. That's a community that survives and it sustains, and it's certainly not sad or lonely. Oh, that, oh, 我什么都不会做，我不就出了家吧，不妨就出家，什么都不能做，那就出家吧。Right? This stereotype. I can't do anything else. I might as well leave home. I'm a loser. I'll just leave home. Right? Nope. Sorry. You misunderstand what you're talking about. You don't even know what it means to leave home. One of the main glues of the sangha are what are called 六合, sangtan 六合. And let me show you what that is just quickly here. Let me share my screen here. There we go. Not that, but this. There it is. 6 aspects of sangha harmony. Look at this. This is the Buddha established these. He says, 三堂六合, 六种和合, 身和同住. We live together as a harmonious group. Live together as a cohesive group. Because our bodies wear the same clothes, eat the same food. 口和无争. Speech in harmony because they don't quarrel. There are guidelines for how you talk, and we talk less. But when you want to talk, you talk, and no gossip. Gossip is false speech, is unskillful speech. 意和同悦. Harmonious thoughts, they enjoy the same things. Thoughts in harmony. And you talk about it. You sit in a circle and discuss twice a month. First, every fortnight, you bring up the issues that you need to talk about in the group, and you talk about them until they're resolved. 见和同解. Views in harmony, same understandings, same way of, and that doesn't mean you have to agree. The Buddhist Sangha has anti-vaxxers. We have political radicals. We have all different kinds of viewpoints, but on the basic things, cause and effect, and how you relate to your brothers and sisters, in harmony, 同解, 戒和同修, with precepts in harmony. They practice the Vinaya together. The foundation of the Buddhist Sangha are the guidelines that we use. The guidelines that we repeat twice a month, that some people memorize and recite from memory. And then finally, 利和同均. Harmonious benefits, we share things together. That's a really key part of the sangha, which is good things that come to the sangha are shared in common. It's not the case that the strong man gets the lion's share and everybody else gets trickle down stuff. No, it's not. Things are shared in harmony. Master Hua wore the same robes for years and years and years, washed them, patched them, and he didn't ride. I never saw Shifu. Shifu never owned any car that was considered a luxury car. BMW, Mercedes, never. It was Chevys and pickup trucks, Volkswagens. You know, cars that folks could afford. That was the way he lived. He used his wealth to establish monasteries. So our association has 28 large training centers. That's where Master Hua's wealth went. So they live together as a harmonious group. Shen He Tong Zhu. Harmonious speech, they don't quarrel. Kou He Wu Zhang. Harmonious thoughts, enjoy the same things. Yi He Tong Yue. Look, body, mouth, and mind. There it is. Jian He Tong Jie, same understandings, our views are in common. Jie He Tong Xiu, practice the Vinaya with our precepts in harmony. And then Li He Tong Jun, we share things in common, so the benefits are shared. So what about that? Isn't that interesting? It's like people think, I don't want to leave home. It's just so lonely. You know, you become misanthropic. You hate the world. You know, that's where the sangha gets the dregs. Not for long. If you're the dregs of society, you can't stay in the sangha. You wouldn't survive. If you're selfish, you can't survive. You miss that tong part, that same in common part. So for these and many other reasons, the Buddhist Sangha has survived for 2,500 years. Amazing. There's a reason for that. Longest running fraternity on the planet, for sure. I wanted to share at this point why would somebody leave home? Bodhisattva on that first stage leaves home so that she can fulfill his or her vows and accumulate practices. So let's talk about one case history, which is our founding story. Prince Siddhartha had a wife. He loved her like he loved life. She was fine and she was fair. And when he said goodbye, he said to her, Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, I'm going to try to get free. Who is this? Our very own Prince Siddhartha, the future Buddha, to be Shakyamuni Buddha. He was prince. He was going to be sitting on top of the world. And in quick succession, he saw someone sick. He saw someone old. He saw a dead corpse. And then he saw a monastic cultivator of the way. And it struck him that that person might know how to avoid old age, sickness, death, and suffering. He said, look at where life leads, old age, sickness, and death. I'm going to try to get free like that fourth messenger who was a practitioner, a cultivator. He says to his wife who is sleeping, whose name is Yashodhara, I'm going to go. I'm going to leave. Bye. Here's why. I took a little trip into town. I learned that death will cut us down. I woke up by the city wall. Freedom to die is no freedom at all. Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, I'm going to try to get free. He says, like you, Princess Yashodhara, I never heard an old man sigh. I never knew that people die. I never heard a sick man moan. We were both privileged in the palace. But I learned today this body is not my home. Yashodhara, death is haunting me. Yashodhara, love won't set us free. It's just another bind. Powerful words, but this is why he left home, this awareness, this awakening. Then I saw another man who walked in robes with bowl in hand. His gaze looked neither left nor right. His brow was clear, his eyes were bright. I asked him what he did all day. He said, I cultivate the way. I watch my mind, I watch my breath, and in the end, it's life and death. Yashodhara, I couldn't love you more. Yashodhara, and that's why I'm walking out that door. See, here's the Bodhisattva resolve. He says, I want to take you across, and I have to cultivate to really do that. Otherwise, I'm going to die before you, and then I'm no help. Some will say that I'm a fool. Some will say that I'm just too cruel. This is the best thing I can do. And when I get free, I'll come back for you. Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, I'm going to try to get free. So from this point of view, Prince Siddhartha's leaving home was actually Bodhisattva impulse. He wanted to take across his wife and his future son and his parents. So it becomes quite a altruistic, not selfish at all. Okay, here we go. Prince Siddhartha had a wife. He loved her like he loved life. She was fine and she was fair, and when he said goodbye, he said to her, Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, I'm gonna try to get free. I took a little trip into town. I learned that death will cut us down. I woke up by the city wall. Freedom to die is no freedom at all. Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, I'm gonna try to get free. Like you, I never heard an old man sigh. I never knew that people die like you. I never heard a sick man moan. Today I learned this body is my home. Yashodhara, death is haunting me. Yashodhara, love won't set us free. Then I saw another man who walked in robes with bowl in hand. His gaze looked neither left nor right. His brow was clear, his eyes were bright. I asked him what he did all day. He said, I cultivate the way. I watch my mind, watch my breath, and in the end it's life and death. Yashodhara, I couldn't love you more. Yashodhara, that's why I'm walking out that door. Now some will say that I'm a fool, and some will say that I'm too cruel. This is the best thing I can do, and when I get free, I'll come back for you. Yashodhara, look at where life leads. Yashodhara, I'm going to Aya. So that's a strong motivation that the prince had, and it was enough to keep him on the path until he woke up. He underwent a lot in search of a way to get free, and he succeeded. So when our sutra tells us that the Bodhisattva, if he can leave home and let go of those ties, and if he can or she can cultivate diligently, then they can rely upon the Tathagata and accomplish wisdom and really be helpful, really be of help to living beings. Okay, now what comes next? What comes next is verses. We start over with the, show you right here. He leaves home, and look, at that time, Vajra Treasury, Bodhisattva, wanting to restate his meeting, started to chant. And they're quite long. I'll show you. The verses from the 10 stages just go on and on and on. There's a lot of verses. We'll have to decide how we're going to, we're doing sutra as literature right now. So we may sing them. We may pick out. We should probably go all the way through. So we'll figure out a way to work with the verses that lets us listen to them as literature. Alrighty. Now, at the Berkeley Monastery, they are still engaged in Chan session, last week of Chan. So the schedule is unchanged, and we will, if you go to berkeleymonastery.org, you can find all of the reduced input. There's less to do, but when that, in another week, Berkeley Monastery will be back firing on all cylinders and providing online opportunities for folks to practice with them. Meanwhile, I want to send people over to dharmaradio.org. Dharma Radio, just like it sounds, DHARMARADIO.org, which is a place to tune in to lots of things. Music by Benedictine Catholic abbots. This beautiful image of Big Sur, painted by Father Arthur Poulin. Chance to get music for good deeds, good karma music. Chance to listen to podcast, Chan Chronicles, Master Hua in America, and more music in the Dharma. So lots of things. And there is, we're currently revamping Dharma Radio, the actual internet radio station. But that's an important venue, an important opportunity to hear the Dharma. The program is preset. It's not live, but it's everything from music, stories, ceremonies, chanting that you can listen to. 还有中文呢，你们可以读一读。这是我们的这个 Dharma Radio, and the podcast is here. The 善业音乐 and 网络电台，这个很重要。So this is, we're still developing it. It's still in progress. But let's see here. Oh, I'm being broadcast. Look at that. That's Dharma Radio is currently featuring this lecture. All right. So a lot of things here for you, and we're hoping to make this a place you will enjoy returning to. Indeed. Now, being mindful that the coronavirus pandemic has not abated. In fact, hospital beds in America are currently unavailable. The state of Queensland here had 18,000 cases in one day, Sam? In a day, 18. So good time to maximize the use of tools for countering the virus. And Mahayana Buddhism has one. It belongs to Medicine Buddha, Yao Shifu, and it's Yao Shifu's mantra for anointing the crown of the head. If we can keep this mantra going in our hearts, it creates a very harmonious and wholesome light and energy, sound energy. So let's learn it and practice it. We use it as a transference. We transfer our merit, and as far as our minds can expand to include living beings, that's how far this goodness goes. So let's transfer the merit, send it out to living beings who need it, including ourselves. Arahate samyak sambuddhaya adhyata om Aisaji 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 Samukate swaha Bhagavate Aisaja Vaidurya Prabharajaya Tagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Adyata Aisaji 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 Samukate Swaha Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Aisaji 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 Samukate Swaha. I've got two images here I'm going to bring up. One is Buddhas in the Buddha Hall at City of 10,000 Buddhas. We can make 3 bows if you care to join me. One is Master Hua. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. All right, that's going to do it for us for today. Ami Tofo. See you all next week, everyone. Bye-bye.